So if a couple bit of housekeeping items, I did not specifically put room in, I should say, for questions and comments. And raise your hand at any time or just jump up and get my attention. At any time, I welcome questions, comments, anything. And as Father Philip said, you need to be loud. So one, so I can hear you. Two, so everyone else can hear you. I might repeat your question just to make sure that everyone else heard it, and so that I have it on the recording. And when the bishop and patriarch come in, we stop. Like, that ends my talk. If you guys have, my final slide has my email address on it. If we don't get that far, I will tell all of you my email address. If you have any questions or comments and stuff I didn't get to, feel free to email me at any time. I really do welcome that. Just remind me in the email, like, who you are and why I would know you. And then, you spoke at the convention, I had this extra question, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And as the lovely Rachel said, I'm Vicki Issa. I have been I also want to say, call me Auntie Vicki with any questions. Do not call me Mrs. Issa, please. I'm not ready for that. And I'm here to talk with you today on self-esteem, boundaries, and judgment. How to grow up and not be a Karen was the full title. Who am I? Slide. Trustworthy assistant. My assistant made the slides, so I'm not calling myself a YouTube star, but so I have a YouTube channel. Please do go and subscribe, because I now have, it says on here 79, but I have 80 now, and that's really embarrassing. So please go and subscribe so I can hit more than that. And on my YouTube channel, there are tons of videos on self-esteem, not so much on boundaries yet, and not so much on the brain stuff I'm going to be talking to you about. Oh yes, there's already a question.
How many subs do you have?
79, that's what I said. Yeah, not very many. Not very many. I need more. I'm a licensed therapist. I practice in Boston, Massachusetts, and I've been running my own private practice since 2012. Why I'm here, tiny bit of background that I want you guys to know. We were dropping the kids off at the village last summer and meeting a lot of the kids from the kids of our friends, basically, that we grew up with. And one of the moms Facebook messaged me back and said, I love your videos. I really want my daughter to start watching them. And then I got the idea, how do I get in front of more teens than just that? If these videos would help teens, then I want to give you more information than that. And so here I am. I also want to add, this isn't part of it, but Uncle Gabe and I are you guys. He grew up going to the village and the conferences on the East Coast all the time. I grew up going to Camp St. Nicholas. We met through church. So, and there weren't talks like this when I was a teenager. So I really wanted to hopefully make this interesting. And like I said, get this information out. I do think you guys are growing up in a very different world than we did.
Maybe.
Maybe not. Is it me?
Maybe no light. It worked outside.
Maybe not. Oh, that's the, does that help?
Is it on?
I can't even see.
Okay.
Does that help at all? Does that help? No. Oh, that did a little bit.
No.
Not enough?
Sorry.
Try again. Oh, does that help, guys? Okay, I can do that. What's that? Okay. Can you guys hear me in the back? Am I loud enough? Thank you. Okay. So, I just said why I'm here. Next slide. Your perception of the world is formed by 6 specific neurons in the brain. Do you all know what neurons are?
No.
Yes.
Okay, so some do, some don't. Neurons are the cells, the units cells in the brain that do everything in the brain. And while there's billions of them in your brain, there are 6 specific ones that form your current perception of the brain and make everything work. Slide. The 6 are stacked like this. And here's what they do. I might not be able to use the microphone the whole time. The middle 2 are forming your current perception right now. They are pulling from the top two and the bottom two. The bottom two are noticing everything that's happening right now in the room. I call it what a video camera would see, and it's more than what a video camera would see. So it's what you're seeing, it's what you're hearing, it's what you feel like in your chair, it's what the temperature feels like. It's literally everything right now in the bottom two. The top two are pulling from every bit of information your brain has been compiling your entire life. Thank you. Yes. And I make that face in session. Yeah. Your entire life, and more than your entire life, 6 months in your mom's womb. Those top two started your perception of the world at 6 months gestational, pre-verbal. So there weren't words yet, obviously. It gets bigger. So the top two and the bottom two feed into the middle two to form your current perception. 80% of that current perception comes from the top two. 80%. Only 20% of your current perception is stemming from what is happening right now. Everything else is stemming from your past, your history, even at your age. Do you have any questions yet? Okay, no, I'm staying there for a second. So, also, we have an implicit memory system and an explicit memory system. Your implicit memory system is the subconscious system in your brain that holds everything you've learned physically and emotionally. It helps you navigate the world, and it's part of every minute of every day. And it's subconscious. Your explicit memories are autobiographical facts, like things about your life, your birthday, what you learned in school, and facts you've learned from things you weren't there for, such as George Washington was the first president. Those are explicit. Another difference between them is explicit memories, you know you are remembering something. Implicit memories, you don't know you're remembering something, you think it's current. For example, how many people in this room remember the day they learned to ride a bike? I do not, so I'm not gonna raise my hand. Okay, some of you do. It's okay if you don't, but so this is the example. If you remember the day, that's an explicit memory. If you don't remember the day you learned and you still know how to ride a bike, that's an implicit memory. Every time you're riding a bike, you're pulling from your implicit memory bank. Implicit memories are how to walk, what a table is, what a computer is. Those are implicit. We do need them to survive in the world. Can you imagine having to relearn how to walk every day? Or how to relearn how to turn your computer all the time. So it does make life easier. Knowing what grass is. I have a whole description of grass, but go to the next slide. Yeah, okay. So grass. Astronauts, I don't know if you know this, astronauts when they come home have forgotten gravity. That's implicit, that's also how fast the memory works. Astronauts literally come home and drop stuff because they're used to being in space where they can drop stuff and it floats. That's implicit. I also like to use the example of when you're traveling. I don't know how many people flew here and how many people use that walking escalator and actually walk on it versus standing on it. Thank you. If you're walking on it and then you get off of it, that's your implicit memory. Thank you. After, relearn how to walk, but that fast. That's also how fast the brain can rewire. So that's good news too, that all this is rewirable. And again, any questions or comments anytime. Okay. So more about the implicit memory system. Remember I said when you're 6 months in your mom's womb? It started then. Your brain captures 11 bits of information per second in your brainstem. And it doesn't look like this in your brain, but there are different layers that the information travels up into your consciousness when your brain has decided that, I think of the brain almost like a whole separate person. When your brain has decided that this is information that's relevant to your world, then it lets it up through those different layers. And you do not consciously register 11 million bits of information a second. By the time it gets up to your consciousness, it's gone down to about 60. Your brain filters 11 million bits of information down to 60. That's why when you learn a new word, or you're shopping for a car, you start hearing the word everywhere or seeing the car. It's because it was always there in the 11 million bits, but your brain didn't think it was necessary yet. Once you've exposed yourself to something, it is now going to travel up your consciousness more and more through those layers that I described. So it's part of why I want to talk to you guys today. I want you to start being more conscious of what goes into your implicit memory bank, because everything you've been exposed to or exposed yourself to is now in that implicit memory bank that's your subconscious. This could be bad words, this could be porn, this could be anything. It's traveling up there and stored in your implicit bank. Once you've exposed yourself to it, it's there. And that's why I'm here today. I reached out to Father Chris. I wanted you guys to all know all this information. So I reached out to Father Chris Lamy to speak to you about that. I wanted you to have more control over what you're putting into that implicit memory bank at your age, because I didn't know it when I was your age. So start paying attention to it. Next one. My girlfriend Jules made this little guy. It's a little brain. And his glasses are because you are viewing the world through history-colored glasses at all times. Again, 80%. Monks, some studies have shown that monks who meditate like 6 to 7 hours a day have gotten that implicit memory bank. Let me rephrase. Those top 2 neurons, they can get them down to 60%. So only 60% for monks is pulling from their history. But we are not meditating 6 to 7 hours a day. So ours is higher than that. And everything else I'm going to be talking about today probably already lives in your implicit memory bank. So I wanted to introduce that part first. And now I want to give you a different way to look at things. Next one. Next one. That was my assistant having a good time. So this is what I'm going to be really going into detail today. There'll be some more brain info sprinkled throughout. The ESA lens of outside sources of self-esteem inequality, how judgment fits into all of it, and the spectrum of boundaries. Next one. Okay. I cannot do this without my hands. This is Dan. Can you guys still hear me if I do this? Okay, thank you. This is Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain, and I label it a teeny bit differently. So this will help, and then I'm going to do it here too. This is your brain. Then he has your brain stem, which is in the palm of your hand. This keeps your heart beating, your lungs breathing. This, if you put your thumb in, this is your subcortical part of your brain, your limbic system. This part of your brain is scanning for safety versus danger 4 to 12 times a second, depending on what study. Safety versus danger, you could also think of the words like, am I okay, am I not okay? And I'll get into that too. When you can pause and breathe and do something different, you can get to this part of your brain. So this top part of your brain, on the hand model I should say, this is your neocortex. When you can activate your neocortex, it calms and shushes the rest of your brain. Like when, I don't know if you guys have ever held a baby, when you go shh to the baby, that's what this part does to the brain. It calms everything down. You can only get to this part of the brain if your brain has detected safety or that you're okay. So if you keep in mind what I said, this part of the brain is scanning for safety versus danger. If it detects danger, it stays here. If it detects safety, it can go here. This is fight or flight, if you guys have heard of that. That's what's happening here. Fight or flight sometimes happens in the brainstem too, but it doesn't happen here. You go here more often than you realize. Safety versus danger, okay versus not okay. I don't love the word danger That's just not the household that I live in. So, but the words are synonymous. Danger, threat, attack. Think of those here too. I'm not in danger in my house, but sometimes I do feel attacked. I should have a slide that has a little thing of salt, because I kid you not, true story. So, I don't cook with salt at all. And it makes him really angry. So, sometimes at breakfast or dinner, and when he's eating, he will say, "Did you cook with salt?" And frequently, I take that as an attack. He doesn't always mean it as an attack. That's why I say you go here more often than you think. And so if I detect it as an attack, I get defensive and I fight back. If I don't detect it as an attack, I can stay here and have a regular conversation with him. But so whatever words resonate for you, safety versus danger, threat, attack, or like I said, okay versus not okay. You can go to the next slide, I think, because they say these. Yeah, so whatever words work for you. For some people, the word safety doesn't really resonate, but okay versus not okay. And you can only get to your connected brain when you feel okay. Some people, when they go here, feel a literal physical whoosh in their body. Does anyone in here feel that? Because my daughter does. Some people don't. I don't. But some people do. Like I was yes, you do. When I was practicing on you, your face lit up and you said, "I feel that way." So again, when you feel under attack or you feel unsafe or not okay, you might feel a physical sensation that comes up from your toes, kind of like you want to kill somebody. Not that anyone would. And again, you might not. I don't. I just know up here. Try the next slide. What? Oh, could be. It could be like when you're riding a roller coaster. But that sounds more fun. This is not a fun one. Okay, hold on. Yeah, they're out of order. You can also call this part your first consciousness because it happens first. Or you can call this one your second consciousness because it happens second. I have a lot of terms for these two. I call these your protective state and your connective state. I also call them your unintegrated brain and your integrated brain. Because when you are here, your brain really separates into separate networks to keep you safe. Like you go into fight or flight, so it's to keep you alive, basically. And when you get into your second consciousness, your brain is more integrated and working at its fullest together. The agenda of the first consciousness is survival. It's get me out of the hard stuff. The agenda of the second consciousness is connection. You can't connect to other people unless you're in your second consciousness. It's like when you're hanging out with your friends and having a good time and everything's going well. The connected state is also where you can see yourself as God sees you. And here's where you can see other people as God sees them. Go to the next one, I think. This was supposed to be earlier because it was when I said when you want to rip someone's head off. So when you get angry and you're in first consciousness, that's this one. Go next. You can also look at these two different brain states as up and down stairs. When you're really angry, you are downstairs. This is in your brain, obviously. And the upstairs is locked. If you're really angry, you cannot access this part of your brain. Your brain is in fight or flight. And since the upstairs is about connection, you can't connect to people when you're really angry. Your brain just doesn't work that way. Okay, next one. Oh, yes.
Can you get to this even like from a state of exhaustion? Does that work that way?
It's harder. Do you mean can you get to your second consciousness?
Yeah.
I do love it when people start using the hands, so thank you, but they in fact didn't know. So what she's asking is, can you get to your connected brain if you're exhausted? You can. It's really, really hard, and thank you for that. This is not in here. There's an acronym: HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Any of those will make it really, really challenging to get to here. I think you probably can. I cannot. Ask my family if I'm hungry. Sometimes I throw my own tantrum. I've stomped. Why isn't everyone coming in for dinner? I mean, I go there. What?
Why is this the calmness and this is not calm? Because if you're anything like this, it looks like it would not be calm.
That is a really good question. That would be a question for Dan Siegel, who created this. So I can't really answer that, but that's a really good question. My son just said, but when you're here, it looks like you're making a fist. So shouldn't it be the other way around? I don't know why he did this the way that he did. It just makes it easier for people to conceptualize how the brain works. That was a really good question. Any other questions? Okay. So self-esteem. There's a researcher today, I don't know if you guys have heard of her, Kristen Neff. She separates self-worth from self-esteem. So you might be seeing her on Instagram, TikTok, any of those. And I like the way she does it. So self-worth, you have worth simply because you were born. Period. Nothing else. You have worth because you were born. It stems from God. We are all born in His image. Go to the next one. I'm not sure. Yeah, we can stay there. God loves me, you, all of us, just because we were born. We are born in His image and likeness, and nothing you say or do throughout your life will add to nor detract from your inherent worth. Inherent means simply because you were born. Here are some statements that reflect it. I have worth because I was born. I have value as a person because I was born. Nothing I say or do throughout my life adds to my worth nor detracts from my worth. I'm enough and I matter in God's eyes. Go to the next one. It's another list. For real, do you guys want me to read these out loud, or do you just want to read them to yourselves? Read them? Okay. I am enough just as I am with God. I do not need to do anything to add to my worth. Who I am is good enough. I can hold myself in warm regard, which just means gently on the inside, in spite of my flaws and imperfections. I can accept that I have flaws and imperfections. I stand equal to all, eye to eye and toe to toe. We are all born equal. I am not better than nor less than anyone else. I was born with inherent worth. It cannot be added to or subtracted from. It does not change throughout my life. Next one. So, actually go back. I went too far. As I said, this is when you can see yourself as God sees you. The only way to believe in your inherent worth is to have had unconditional love in childhood. That is the only way. Hope is not lost, though, because if you don't believe you do or you didn't, there are ways that you can work on that throughout adulthood as well. But to have it from childhood stems from unconditional love, which comes from God. When we don't believe in these statements, we are getting our worth from outside sources instead, and this is where Kristen Neff describes that as self-esteem, when it comes from the outside sources. Now go to the next slide. That was my fault. These outside sources are achievements, society, and attributes and assets, which I have made to, well, my husband made, he likes to get credit for that, made it fit with our last name. So that's not random coincidence. We really did make them that way. So, next one. Achievements. I have worth because of what I do, what I achieve, how I perform. If I'm in sports and I win the game, if I get good grades, if I'm a stay-at-home mom and I cook a good meal, I win the Olympics, the Academy Award, any of those, whatever you can think of, it's based on what I do, how I perform, what I achieve. Next one. I'll explain why there's a picture of Taylor Swift here. Society. I have worth because you say I do. And it depends on who the you is. So it could be parents, friends, teachers, romantic partner, anyone. I pretend to be what you want. Because if my worth depends on how you look at me, I'm going to try to be the person you want or need me to be. I have it on here. I'm the teacher's pet, so I totally out myself here. Or I used to be. I don't have a teacher anymore. But I was the teacher's pet. I'm totally society-based esteem. And Taylor Swift is on here because I'm not sure how many, the lyrics sound better with music, but I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with her song Blank Space. But there's literally a line that says, find out who you want, be that girl for a month. That is this. And she's not my client, so I'm not giving anything away. But I think when I listen to a lot of her lyrics, I hope she's in therapy. Sweet girl, I love her songs, but she needs a lot of work. Next one. Assets and attributes. I have worth because of what I have or what I look like. If you have the right car, house, outfit, shoes, purse. If you have the right hair, the right face, the right body. And I just thought the Kardashians were a really good example of this because they have like the attributes. They have they're pretty, they work out, they look great, but they also have a lot of assets and they're on TV. So I thought they were a good example of this. I'm not their therapist. I'm not saying they live there, but they are a good example. Next one. Any questions yet? Okay. I'm going to paint you a picture. I want you to picture 7-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. She is a violin prodigy who's probably going to go to Juilliard someday. And her brother is a little mess who can't color in the lines and can't turn in his homework on time. Does either of them have more worth? I want not. She says yes to me. I want nods. Yes or no? No. Okay. Now, you don't believe it. Next slide. Flash ahead 30 years. They're 37. She's still playing the violin. She teaches at Juilliard. She's in the New York City Symphony. And her brother can't keep a job and can't move out of their parents' basement. Does one of them have more worth? So thank you for the one saying no, because that's the real answer, yes. But the honest answer that most of us have when we see them in adulthood is that they do, because we've started judging. Yeah, I know, I saw it. There's a question.
Well, like, wait, why? I don't get it, because like one of them is like really rich and stuff, and the other one like.
Is the other one what?
I don't know. Like, anyway, one of them does have.
Wait, what?
I think one of them does have more words.
Do you?
She's doing stuff.
Yeah. So based on that, you would say that she's achievement-based.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so that's her worth from the outside source. Because they both have the inherent worth when they were born, the same as what they did when they were 7.
But not from Jesus.
Well, they do if they're both Christian. Well, no, we believe that everyone does. Yeah. But it's harder, the point of the story is that it's harder to see their inherent worth that we saw when they were 7 when they're into adulthood. That's when other stuff creeps into all of our minds. Anyone else have questions? And you just led me to the next thing I was going to say, thank you, which is, does her worth come from the achievements that she's done? Or does her worth come from the way we all look at her? Or does her worth come from how much money she's making? Or from her skill at the violin? Those are all those outside sources I was just pointing out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any other questions? And that's, you could say that. And that's not where the outside sources are, well, that's the next thing I was going to say, so I'll just say it. The outside sources, I don't know that I can, not yet, will always leave you unfulfilled. Actually, I don't say that yet. Okay. I believe, so I just said, thank you for asking that. We could show all the examples through them. Is she achievement-based, is she society-based, or is she attribute or asset-based? I do believe that most people, if not all of us, what I call blend. So people use their achievements to get people to like them. Or people use their clothes or their hair or their makeup to get people to like them. That's what I call blending. I think that all of us at our core are actually society-based. That's my theory, that it's about what other people think of us way deep down, but we use those other methods to get people to like us. And part of why I think this, now slide, is because humans are a communal species. That means we are born wired for connection, wired to be in community. It is in our DNA. Hold on. Just as God himself is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, we are relational. That's what I meant by communal. We do better when we are in relationships. Funny coincidence, this model where I learned all this is actually called relational life therapy. It's about relationships. You all probably don't know this. Next one. When a baby is born in the hospital, at least for the past 11 years, because it was with my son, I think it was I'm sure this happened to all of you. There's something called skin-to-skin contact. The second the baby comes out of the mom, that baby is placed on mom or dad's bare chest. Because someone found out that placing the baby's heart next to the parent's heart teaches the baby's heart how to beat at the optimal state. That's connection. It was found that when we are in connection, we are, I hate these therapeutic words, I'm sorry, but like less activated, less dysregulated. We do better when we are with other people. That's about the connection. Being out of connection is painful and scary. And I actually believe that we were created as a communal species to be in connection because we were created in his image. Because he is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit together, I think he created us to be in connection that way. Well, I guess we know he did because he created Eve to be with Adam. Sorry, that was me thinking off the cuff. Sometimes I do that. But he did create us to be together. How many of you, when you got in trouble when you were little, or maybe even now, were sent to your room to be alone? Anyone? True story. For how many of you did that work? Because sometimes it does, so I'm really curious. Sometimes we do need time and space to be alone, absolutely. And for some kids, what they really want, even in those moments, is connection with their parents. So for some kids, being sent to their room is actually worse. And remember when I was mentioning those up and down stairs earlier? That can be really hard when you really want the connection and you're too mad and you can't have it. So that's part of why that's a struggle for you as well. Those outside sources make us feel a form of connection. They do. But they do that when things are going well. So what happens when things are not going well? And we all know this. You don't always win the game. You don't always get the good grades. You don't always wear the right outfit to whatever you're going to. You can't make everyone happy all the time. And that's when we are left unhappy, unfulfilled, and searching, is when we're using those outside sources and they're falling short. Next one. When our worth comes from knowing that God loves us just because we were born, we find inner peace, joy, which puts our brain into that connective state. Our safety, our okayness, if you remember I said when you're here it's not okay versus okay, our okayness, that's a new word that we made up, as Christians stems from God. His love, his compassion. The knowledge that nothing we do is outside of his ability to love us and welcome us back to him. Picture the prodigal son parable here and that dad who welcomed him back. He loves us just because we were born. Now maybe you're already asking yourself, but aren't I allowed to take pride when I win the game? Aren't I allowed to be happy when I get good grades or get excited about a new outfit? Yes. Yes, we are. And there's a fine balance between that enjoyment and tipping the scale into the outside sources of fulfillment. Next one. And here's my Cliff's Notes version of tipping the scale. Next one. That was just a fast one. Pride versus worth. Small doses of pride are healthy and good for the body. They release endorphins, the feel-good chemicals. So why is that shaking? Did you notice that?
No.
Okay. Maybe it's just me. So the question becomes, where does this tip the scale into self-worth? Or where does it tip the scale into sin? So again, pride in small doses is good, but does your worth stem from it? Next one. Connection versus worth. You just heard me talking about how great connection is and how we need it. So are you just enjoying the connection with people, or do you need their approval for your worth? So that's where that one tips the scale. Next one. And entertainment versus worth. We're allowed to take pleasure and have enjoyment. We're allowed to be entertained by our stuff. It's okay to have the biggest TV and enjoy watching movies, or nice clothes and nice things, but does your personal worth depend on those things? So that's where it tips the scale. What I've noticed in myself and conversations with others is that we typically notice these areas when we don't feel worthy, when our worth is missing. Next slide. This is here because it's a story that I have. My girlfriend was telling me, she's now married and has a child and lives in this great house. The first day that her and her fiance went to look at that house, she felt that whoosh that I described as she walked in the door and thought to herself, I can't live in this house. I'm not worthy of this house. And that's when it hit me. Oh, we notice it when it's missing. Like, you're not going to walk into a house and go, I am totally worthy of this house. You're not going to, this is more for girls, sorry, but like, you're not going to go shopping and see the outfit or pick up the purse and think, I'm totally worthy of this. It's that we notice it when it's not there. That's when we struggle with it. And again, she does live in that house now. Spoiler alert. Next one. So this is just to refresh. Do you have self-esteem or self-worth? Does your worth come from those outside sources, or do you have inherent worth that comes from within? And some people believe this more easily than others. Your worth stems just from being born. I do not need to do anything to add to my worth. Who I am is good enough. I can hold myself in warm regard in spite of my flaws and imperfections. I am enough and I matter in spite of my flaws and imperfections. I stand equal to all, eye to eye and toe to toe. We are all born equal in His love for us. I'm not better than or less than anyone else. Nothing I say or do adds to my worth nor detracts from my worth throughout my life. What? That's with compassion later. There's something, there it is. I can hold myself in warm regard in spite of my flaws and imperfections. Yes, humans have flaws and imperfections. Not only is it okay, it is bound to happen. Sorry, I have a child crawling up here. You distracted me. Perfectionism is an impossible outcome. Stop berating yourself when you don't reach it. It's an okay goal. It's an impossible outcome. Next one. Do you have a question? Well, I'll get to it. I will. Okay. I believe this part can be, the perfectionism piece can be very challenging for Christians. I was always told to try to be like Jesus, that He's the example, which He is, and He was both God and man. Being perfect, He was perfect because He was God and man. Being perfect is never going to be possible for humans. Perfectionism is an okay goal as we emulate Him. We just have to know and accept that it's not going to be the outcome. It's an impossible goal. And we can emulate, obviously we should, emulate His other qualities as well. His mercy, His forgiveness, His compassion, and those will come up with this too. So the work for us is, how do we manage our own emotional response when we do mess up? Which leads to the next section. Slide. So this is what I was talking about with self-esteem and equality. I want you to picture everything I just said about inherent self-worth as a circle in the middle. So I either do it like right here, which is all my YouTube videos, or like your core, just like the circle in the middle of you. Because this other lens is when you go up into better than or down into lesser than. So that's what those are, the labels. The goal is same as. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. I'm not better than you nor less than you based on our strengths or weaknesses. God loves us all the same. This sameness is what I meant by equal. We are all equal in his eyes in his love for us. Do I have less worth as a person or less value if I'm not as good of a speaker as one of my friends? Or I'm not as good of a hostess as one of my friends? We are all equal and have equal value. It has nothing to do with those strengths versus weaknesses. Christianity really is the greatest equalizer. No one is better than nor less than anyone else. Christians believe we are all born equal in his eyes. We are all born in the image of God. Why do I use terms such as better than and less than? Because that's exactly what happens here. You believe when you go into better than, you are looking down on someone. And when you go into less than, you are looking down on yourself and up at other people. If you're in less than, you believe other people are better than you. You don't have a question, right? Just checking. The emotion behind both is the same, and it's negative. Some believe it's contempt. I believe it's judgment. And people have, which I'll come back to, people have a general area they gravitate towards, and then sometimes there's a bounce. Myself, I tend to gravitate towards less than. My husband gravitates towards better than. Thank you. He didn't know I was going to say that, so I'm glad he handled it well. Yes.
So you're saying that everyone has like equal worth, no matter what?
Yes. I feel like you're about to challenge that.
No, I'm just making sure.
Okay, yes. When we go into our first consciousness, if you guys remember that, I'll get you to in 1 second. That's when we go into lesser than or better than. When we are in our connective state is when we can see that we are all equal in that core in the middle. Yes?
Well, like, this is just an example, but like if you play a sport or someone gets like better grades than you, are you guys like looking at it from a specific like lens of like academics or like athleticism, or are you guys still worth the same if one is like known to have a better rank than the other?
Well, yes. So I would say you're both worth the same and that you have different strengths. Keep asking, keep pushing. This is a whole different way to look at the world. I know that.
But like,
and some heads are exploding.
like statistics, speaking like statistically, like, I'm just going with like two like football kids, but like one is known to have like better, like I don't know, just better stats than the other one, and you're saying they're supposed to be viewed equally.
I'm saying they both have the same inherent worth on the inside.
Yeah, that.
They're equal as people.
Yeah, but like looking through it from like a scout version or like.
Yeah.
Like they're not gonna.
The world sets us up into better than and less than. Yeah, you're right. And if you're when you said the scout, do you mean like the athletic scouts that come from the colleges to look at the high schools? Yeah, I mean that's what they're looking for. But what, in my perspective, what they're looking for is the different strengths. I need the athlete that has the greatest strength in this area. I'm not even looking at the athlete as a person, which I think is really sad. Trust me, we've had a lot of these. My poor husband. I have a lot of these conversations at home because I come up with these theories all the time and then I explode to him about them. So yes, we've had this conversation. I think the athletic world really puts people into better than and less than. Amir, I saw you. Give me 1 second. There was someone over here too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Question. So what if
Please.
you have like someone who's a Christian and striving towards the kingdom, and then you have like someone else who like gave himself over to Satan and like sold himself to the devil? Like, do they still have the same?
I think in God's eyes. I think God would be very sad by that. That was a really good question. Yeah. I think God sees all of us the same no matter what. I don't always make it that. I mean, I don't always accomplish it. Yes.
If God sees us all the same, then why do you have stuff like the first shall be last and the last shall be first?
I think that goes into like the achievement-based stuff.
Well,
of
Jesus
like,
said that, right?
Yeah, but I think he's saying the people of this world who think that they're first, they need to humble themselves and understand their equality. I don't know. That might be a better question for a priest, but that's would be my interpretation of it.
What about like the Pharisees in the Bible, when he's like rebuking the Pharisees? Like, is that putting their worth kind of below other people, or is it just?
Well, my theory on that one would be that, what? Jump in and answer. You hear this at home all the time. Feel free to answer.
He's reviewing their actions,
That's right.
but not them as people, not their worth inside. So they can be and are equal to you, but what they're doing is not where it should be.
I would even see that, thank you, as that's what I was trying to get to in my head, is I see that as dipping into achievement-based esteem. Hold on one second. Yes, you and
Does this to help us not be Karen?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it what?
That's the quiz at the end, but yes, you're already getting, thank you. Yes.
Does it have to be either self-worth or self-esteem, or can it be both?
It can be both. I mean, when I first learned this lens, Kristen Neff was not separating them out, so I learned all of it as self-esteem. And it was, is your self-esteem coming from the inside or the outside is how I learned it. And then I like how she separated it out. So it sounds weird, but whatever works with your brain, whatever helps you conceptualize it, works.
So is it like negative to like have confidence? Is like looking down?
No, and thank you, because I do not have that in here, and I thought about it this morning.
Good question.
That's an excellent question. I get a lot. Oh, thank you. The question was, is it negative to have confidence? Not at all. Here's how I explain that. Self-confidence is what you feel in your strengths. I think that's awesome. One, as long as you don't go into better than, which I haven't gotten into a lot of detail yet. But two, the difference I think between, the problem I think with self-confidence, if we only focus there, is self-confidence in my own thought doesn't acknowledge our weaknesses. Self-worth is I'm still the same person even though I have weaknesses, and confidence is way more focused on what I'm good at. Does that make sense?
So wouldn't confidence be like you said, like you believe in like your strengths, but like wouldn't it be like you believe in your strengths are better than the other person? Because like you're confident that you're better than.
As long as I don't look at the other person as less than me as a person, but like for real, and I kind of wish she was in here. The Hootie Allison, who's helping host this, most amazing hostess I've ever met in my life. She's one of my best friends, and I do not have that area of strength. So I could look at myself as less than her because she has this great strength that I don't have. Or I could see us both as equals in the eyes of God, and she has strengths that I don't have, and I hope that I have some strengths that she doesn't have, but I couldn't tell you what they are. I just think Allison's amazing. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. What? Yes?
So you might be great at basketball, and you can step onto a court and say, I'm gonna crush this guy. I am way better than him. And you know it, and that's confidence. But your confidence, your abilities are better than this person at basketball. You step off that court, you're a person, he's a person in the eyes of God. So it's a fine line. It's tough to separate being better than this person compared to being better than this person at basketball. And sometimes those lines get blurred in our brains, and that's the work that we have to do to separate ourselves from those two lenses. I hear this stuff a lot.
He does. He does. Yes, you had something.
Can I give an example of how we're all equal?
Sure. Stand up. My son wants to give an example. He hears this a lot too.
Yeah. So one night when we were sitting on the couch, I said that not everyone is equal because I don't think that everyone is. So my mom gave me an example. If me and my favorite YouTuber were in a burning building, who would they save? And she told me that they would save me because we're equal, and I thought that they would save him because I thought he's better than me because he's a famous YouTuber.
I don't remember that. But they're both equal. Does that make sense? Okay, another one. Yep.
So would you say that like confidence and pride, like the line between that is the idea of like looking at yourself as being better than other people, and like that's what kind of separates the two of
could be, yes. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going. Thank you. Another one, yes. I need to be repeating the questions, I'm sorry. So did you say, what do I tell a non-Christian about what their inherent worth stems from? Sadly, I say all the same stuff and I leave out God. So I just say the part of you have inherent worth because you were born, period. I prefer to work with Christians so I can add that part in. But I don't. I don't always. Does that help? Anyone else? This is exactly what I wanted that I like didn't put in like the Q&A. So anything. So as I mentioned, most people, I believe, do gravitate towards a specific area. And then there's also something I call a bounce, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's when you start in one area and bounce to the other one. Go to the next slide. Yeah. And often the language is the same. So, I messed up turns into, no, you messed up. It's my fault turns into, it's your fault. Or my own favorite, I'm a horrible mother, no, you're a horrible father. It's true. But so those are the bounces from the less than into the better than. So, true story. And as you can see, my son is totally fine. But there was a day 8 years ago that we forgot to feed him. So Michael, lunch, one meal, we forgot to feed him lunch. So Michael had an orientation, and I had an outside appointment. So, and then Uncle Gabe worked from home that day for the outside appointment. So I left for my appointment, he took him to orientation, I left my appointment, picked him up from orientation, brought him home, totally fine. And like an hour later, Michael looks at me, and this is orientation for kindergarten, so he was like, I don't know, 4 or 5. And he looks at me and he says, Mommy, I'm hungry, can you make me lunch? And I looked over at Uncle Gabe and I went, you didn't make him lunch before you left? And Uncle Gabe looked at me and went, no, I'm working all day, you're home on Thursdays, why didn't you make him lunch before you left? And I went, oh, okay. I went and made him lunch. And I thought to myself, I think he just did a bounce. And I do have his permission to share this story. So basically, I thought that he went into, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible father, I forgot to feed him, no, you're a horrible mother. What he did go into was, it's my fault, no, it's your fault. But that's a bounce. See how that works? Being in the less than feels so crappy that we want to bounce up into a better than. And it's rare, but sometimes people also can bounce from the top to the bottom. I think there might be a slide, I'm not sure. Go to the next one. Hold on, Michael. Oh yeah, so you messed up, you're horrible. It's again, the same verbiage. Can then go into, I'm horrible, it's actually my fault. My girlfriend was upset with her neighbors for something, and she has a dog and they have chickens, and that part's irrelevant. She let her dog go into their yard and do some stuff because she was mad at them. And then after it happened, she felt horrible. So sometimes you can bounce from the top to the bottom. It is rare. Most people bounce from the bottom to the top. Go to the next one. Remorse lives in the center. The up and the down are both preoccupied with ourselves. Remorse is when we can focus on the other person, whomever it is, and it stems from our inherent worth. If you remember, one of the statements was, I can hold myself in warm regard in spite of my flaws and imperfections. Remorse is, I messed up, it doesn't mean I'm a horrible person, or whatever the verbiage goes on in your head. So remorse takes the effort from when you're in less than to breathe yourself up into equality again, versus going into a bounce of better than doesn't take any effort at all. That's the quick and easy, no, it's not my fault, it's your fault. Versus, oh, I messed up, I may have hurt you. That's remorse. Once you've dipped into, I'm a horrible person, or what's wrong with me, or whatever verbiage would happen in your own head, two things have happened. This is what I mean by we're preoccupied with ourselves. Those statements are all about you. And this is when you've gone back into that less than place. Again, years ago, our kids were really little. It was like 11 p.m. the night before Father's Day. And I looked at him and I went, I don't think we should do gifts for Mother's and Father's Days because you're not my dad and I'm not your mom, and the kids aren't old enough to really know. So I don't think we should do gifts. And he very nicely looked at me and he goes, is this your way of telling me you didn't give me a gift for tomorrow? And I plummeted into a less than. And I looked at him and I went, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Actually, no, my first answer I went into better than was, well, you didn't give me a Mother's Day gift either. Then he reminded me what he did get me. Then I plummeted down into the less than. I'm horrible. I can't believe I did that. I'm so sorry. That's what I mean by the preoccupation with self. Rather than any remorse of like, no, you're right, I didn't, it became all about me. Other terms for less than and better than are also grandiosity and shame, or one up and one down. One up and one down I use a lot. It's just very succinct. Show me the next one. I'm not sure. Nope, go back. I'm not ready yet. Thank you. So if we talk about grandiosity and shame, please know that shame is not a motivator. If we berate ourselves more and more, it does not motivate us to change our behavior in the long run. There's actual research on this that shows that shame leads to addictive behaviors later in life, be it drugs, alcohol, food. Shame does not motivate us. Brene Brown, if any of you have heard of her, she's today's expert on shame, and it's her research that has showed us about the addiction issues it leads to, and she also distinguishes shame from guilt in this way. Now go. So shame is, I'm a bad person. It's in your character and you can't change that. Guilt, on the other hand, is I did a bad thing. That's changeable. If I did a bad thing, I can fix that. Guilt is a good thing, and it reminds us that we acted outside of our own integrity. Guilt brings us back to our own inherent worth. It takes us to remorse, and remorse brings us back to God. Go to the next one. Confession is remorse. Allow your father confessor to bring you out of shame, I'm a bad person, and into remorse, I did a bad thing. Remorse with God is always easier than with us humans on earth. God is always ready and willing and waiting to forgive us and welcome us back with open arms. Remember the story of the prodigal son again? I really like that story. The son came back with remorse. Next one, maybe? Yes, okay. So, I admitted that when my kids really misbehave, and mine are younger than all of you, so maybe you don't act like this, but when they misbehave and they come back to me with their true remorse, sometimes I'm not ready. I'm not always ready to welcome them back and hear it because I'm still in my own protective state. I'm still mad and stuck there. I do try to fake it. We can ask them if they notice. I try to fake it and get myself ready to connect with them as fast as possible. I hug them and welcome them back to me anyway, and sometimes that's hard. It's never a struggle for God. Allow God to be the perfect parent that your own human parents aren't able to be. Next one. So remember when I said how some people call it contempt and I call it judgment when you're in those better than and less than places? The goal is to live a contempt-free life, a judgment-free life. And the goal for Christians is to live a judgment-free life. I don't know that I have any. I really want to emphasize that when you're in up, you're looking down on someone, and when you're in the down, you're looking down on you. I just wanted to repeat that. Go to the next one. When you are berating yourself and judging yourself for messing up, you don't believe all those statements of inherent worth that I said at the beginning. This is when you're in what I would call a less than place. Yeah, you're not holding yourself warmly. So the answer to this is to breathe yourself back up into that same as place, that core in the middle, with I'm enough and I matter. I am not less than others. I have worth because I was born. Any of those statements can help. Or, and I shouldn't say or. Next one. Say the Jesus prayer when you're here. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner, and allow for God's grace and mercy to bring you back into your inherent worth and value. Keep in mind when you're here and trying to breathe yourself back up, this is not about excusing yourself. Because if you go into making excuses, you've then bounced back into the better than place. So this really is a delicate balance of getting yourself into middle, same as, and not better than with the excuses. And what do you do when you're judging someone else? You're still going to breathe yourself back to the center, but you can't say I'm enough and I matter, because trust me, if you're in a better than up place, you know you're enough and you matter. The problem is you think you're more than enough and matter. Next one, I think. So when you're judging someone else, you think to yourself, they matter too. This person is created in the image and likeness of God just as I am. This person is loved by God just as I am. You basically bring yourself down by bringing them up. This one's better if I do it without the mic. So when you're down, you breathe yourself up, right? But if you're an up, the way to get yourself down is to bring them up to meet you. And then you've ended up in the center back together again. And this is harder to do. It's easy to bring ourselves up from the down because the down feels so bad. It's hard to bring ourselves down from the up because the up feels good. So people enjoy being there. Go to the next slide. Another way out of judgment is to build and foster compassion. Compassion stems from God. It is gentle lovingness. Can you look at yourself that way? Can you look at others that way? And can you see yourself and others the way that God does? Compassion is the antidote to judgment. Compassion only lives in the second consciousness, the connected state of the brain, and it again stems from God. Like I've said a few times, can you see yourself the way God sees you? You really want to talk about the high five? Okay. There's a way to build compassion separate from all this that I didn't have in here, and my son really wanted to explain it.
So almost every school day during the school year, but right before my carpool ride comes, my mom makes me and my sister go into the bathroom to do this thing called high fives, where you basically say something encouraging and high five yourself in the mirror. And she says that it's supposed to make your brain think that you're that you're equal to everyone, and that no one's better than you and no one's less than you. It probably doesn't work for my sister because she still thinks that she's better than me a lot. And it also doesn't work for me because I still think I'm less than everyone a lot. But I think it works for my mom a lot.
I'm working on it. So what he's describing, you could Google this. I think it was created by Mel Robbins. Literally, it's called the high five movement. And you go into the mirror and you high five yourself. And you say the encouraging things that would go with a high five, such as great job, you can do it, you can achieve anything. A lot of those things. I also do, you have worth because you were born in the image of God. We say that every morning. The only reason it's during the school year is because an alarm goes off at 7:10 and I'm not getting up at 7. I just haven't reset it for the summertime. But it rewires pathways in the brain to build that second consciousness, which builds compassion. So you could set a reminder in your phone to do a high five in the mirror every day. He really wanted to put that in there. Now I want to put these two lenses of self-esteem, the self-worth on the inside, plus the outside sources, and better than and less than with another story. Then I'll move on to boundaries. Have we heard from, hold on one second. Have we heard from that? Okay, because I just realized. And what was your question?
What's the right way to deal with someone who thinks they're better than you?
What's the right way to deal with someone who thinks they're better than you? So we're going to get to that in 2 seconds. It's boundary work to not absorb their stuff. So the first thing I could tell you, though, is that that's on them, and you don't have to accept that you're less than. That's what they're trying to do, is put you in a less than place, and you just have to do a lot of the stuff I was saying. If you want, I could email you all these, I call them affirmations, because you need to be saying those to yourself all the time. It's very hard to be around that person. I hear you. And it's my children all the time. Any other questions? Okay. So my story. I was going to skip the story, and then my daughter really wanted me to use it. So as I said, I am society-based esteem. I'm very open about that. And it used to be about having my boss's attention. I like to be the boss's favorite. And I've been my own boss since 2011. So he thinks he's the boss, so I will put that there. But I run my own business. And I learned this lens in 2016, and by the time I learned it, I was in my own business with no boss, totally thought I was healing on the other side, had inherent worth. And then in 2019, a family issue came up, and I wasn't feeling in with my cousins. There was some drama going on, and I felt horrible. So that's the outside source of society affecting me, and I went into less than, and I felt less than for days. I had to pray a lot. I was praying a lot and doing my affirmations. And that's when I realized, oh, I'm not over this. It's just my other person has changed. I don't have a boss anymore that I'm trying to appease. And thankfully, whether he thinks it or not, I don't get my worth from my husband. We have a very healthy marriage. I'm not trying to appease him all the time so that I feel loved. So again, without a boss, I was thinking I was all set, and I wasn't. So it's just good to be aware of where your worth is stemming from. Social media would fit in here too. I mean, like I said, I'm going to get into boundaries unless we get cut off. But social media is totally placing all of us at all times into a better than and less than place. Because we either think, I don't want to say we think we're better than the people there, but a lot of what we're seeing on social media is how we aren't measuring up. So it is likely, I can't speak for anybody, but there's a chance it could be putting you guys into a less than place. So just be aware of what you're looking at and how it's affecting you. And now I can move into boundaries. Go to the next one. Boundaries can relate to your psychological space, who you let touch you, how close you let people get to you, who you let near your personal belongings. It can be physical or psychological. Boundaries will help you feel safe. And I'm going to get into these definitions of the containment boundary and the protective boundary. So with the psychological side, my girlfriend Jules describes psychological boundaries in this way. You and I having a difference of opinion does not make me unsafe. So if you remember the hand, you and I having a difference of opinion does not put me in that first consciousness. There's another woman named Prentice Hemphill, and her statement is, boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. I don't love her definition, but some people do, so I like to give people both to play with. So feeling safe or not safe, safe, not okay, okay. Boundaries help with that. When your physical boundaries are working, you don't get into fights with people because people are allowed to disagree with you. Psychological boundaries, I meant, sorry. When your psychological boundaries are working, people can disagree with you. You won't get into the same amount of fights. Go to the next one. I'm going to start with the containment boundary. So the containment boundary protects the world from you. I always say picture someone, you're going to picture either a container going over you to contain you, or I like this image. So it's just literally protecting the world. You're shutting your mouth. Picture someone with an anger management problem, right? They would need to be more contained. This boundary in your brain is the space between what I think or feel and what I say. I don't have to say everything that crosses my mind. On the flip side, am I so contained that I don't let enough of myself out and people don't get to know me? Then the protective boundary. Next slide. The protective boundary protects you from the world. This one means I don't have to absorb everything I hear. I don't have to absorb everything that comes at me. This one is either like this, I kind of like this umbrella, or it's like a glass wall that comes up in front of you, and anything you disagree with would hit the glass wall. With this one, I want you to ask yourself 3 questions when someone is saying something. Is this true? Is this about me? And how close is this person to me? Because lots of what comes at us is really about the other person. And there can be nuance here. If your protective boundary is in place, you can let some of the sentence in and keep the rest out, and you don't have to get defensive. So, like, I'm totally making this up, but I like to give this example. If I'm getting ready for work in the morning and I ask Uncle Gabe, how do I look for work today? And he looks at me and goes, I love everything. I don't like that lip gloss. So I absorb. He loves the outfit, he loves the accessories, and I might then go and look in the mirror and decide if I agree with him on the lip gloss or not. And that could go one of two ways. Maybe I look in the mirror and go, oh yeah, he's totally right. And I wipe it off and try something else. Or I look in the mirror and I think, no, I like this lip gloss. I can go about my day. But you have that nuance. You can let in some of the sentence and not all of it. And here's a Cliff Notes version of the protective boundary. If you get defensive, your protective boundary failed. It really is that simple. Because that means you let something in that either wasn't true or wasn't about you. This is what I was telling you about if someone else thinks they're better than you. The protective boundary would stop that from coming in. Does that make sense? That's their stuff. Okay, so let your friend know that. That might help. And what I want to point out here as well is that for most of my clients, it can be very challenging to know what is about, well, for me too, what is about me and what is really about the other person. So I tell stories about my friends if I don't have one for myself. My girlfriend Jules is 6 feet tall. I don't know if there's any really tall girls in here. But she tells this story, and she says it's common for women that she, when she goes to get gas and goes into the convenience store, it's very common that the cashier will go, whoa, you're tall. Is it hard to get a boyfriend? Now, I heard that story, and she is tall. So how does she know that that's more about the cashier than about her? Because she is tall. So isn't it kind of about her? But no, that's him and his stuff. Basically, any tall girl could walk in and he would say the same thing. So that's what I mean when, is this true? Yes, she's tall. Is this about me? No. In that case, it's not. So she doesn't absorb it. And then, how much do I care about this person? She doesn't totally care what the cashier has to say, so she just says, no, I'm happily married, thank you, and goes about her way. Her husband, Adam, is 5'9". They've been married for 17 years. Adam knows how tall she is. If she comes out to go out that night and she's wearing heels, and Adam says, hey, sweetheart, could you wear different shoes tonight? Is this true? Yes, she's tall. Is this about her? Nope, still about the other guy. But how much does she care about her husband? A lot. So she might say to him, well, I really like these shoes, but honey, is something going on with you tonight because you knew how tall I was when we got married? So how much do I care about this person? If you care about them, you'll engage more to find out what's going on. And if you don't be rude, but like you just go about your business. In our relationships, these can work together. My husband and I have this little issue with his sarcasm. So I could say to him, please contain that better. And he could say to me, well, if you were more protected, I wouldn't have to be so contained. So we have not had that conversation, but we totally could. But we're both right. If he was more contained, I wouldn't have to be so protected. And if I was more protected, he wouldn't have to be so contained. So we're both right. What? But you're funnier. And here's something else I want to point out about the containment boundary. You could go back to the other slide. You don't have to. This is where you're going to stop yourself from gossiping. You're going to contain it. And in part, you're containing it for your sake. We've all known forever that we're not supposed to gossip and it's bad, even though it can be fun. Sorry. But try to now see gossip through this lens I just mentioned. A few weeks ago, I was literally going to gossip to him. I'm not kidding, at coffee hour. I admit it. I don't even remember what I was going to say, but I do remember thinking it. And I thought to myself, I don't want to be a stumbling block to him. So I didn't. So contain it for your sake, but also start containing it for the sake of the person you're talking to. Boundaries and self-esteem work together like the infinity sign. If you guys know what that is. So as one improves, the other improves, and vice versa. So the stronger one gets, the stronger the other one gets. When we let stuff through our boundaries, we may end up in that less than place where we're judging ourselves, or we may end up in that better than place where we're judging the other person. And I think, go to the next one. I think that might be it. Protective, we did that. Oh, so here's some bullet points on boundaries. They help keep you from gossiping. They help keep you from hurting yourself or others with the judgment or contempt. They keep us from going into less than if we filter what we take in. They keep us from going into better than if we filter what we put out. And as your boundaries improve, so will your it says self-esteem because it's the other lens. So will your self-worth. And now go to the next one. Okay, so I'm almost done. And someone asked about this. So my bib pop quiz for the very end is, how do you not become a Karen based on everything I just told you?
You take the time to self-reflect and but you have to do it without comparing yourself to somebody, because then you're judging them and you're at a point where am I better or am I less than that person?
Well done. Are you society-based, star student?
Maybe.
I'm totally teasing. Any other questions or comments or anything? And here's all my contact information, including my email address. So again, if you guys had any questions or follow-up or anything, feel free to reach out. I welcome that. And that's all I had.
Thank you.